You do not need the strongest powers of observation to see that crime is a pretext and not the main reason for the military occupation of Washington by federal agents and soldiers from the National Guard. If the President of the United States actually cared about crime in the nation's capital, he would push House Republicans to restore the $1 billion Congress cut from the city's budget so that Washington could fully staff its Metropolitan Police Department and pay for the services and personnel necessary to keep the city safe. He might fill vacancies at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington and on the local Superior Court to help federal and municipal officials bring cases to fruition. Looking beyond Washington, he might also have kept federal agents assigned to actual criminal cases rather than move them to the immigration enforcement or saddle them with investigations of his political enemies, which doesn't really have anything to do with crime. If the president really cared about crime, he would not have pardoned the January 6 rioters, many of whom have gone on to commit violent crimes in their communities. Still, the president's obvious indifference to the actual work of preventing criminal victimization has not stopped some professional political observers from defending the occupation of Washington on the grounds that there is crime in the city. Quote, "I have no doubt that Trump enjoys targeting Democratic-controlled cities for embarrassment," wrote Michael Powell in The Atlantic, conceding that the deployment is pretextual. But, he added, "I also have little doubt that a mother in Ward 8 might draw comfort from a National Guard soldier standing watch near her child's school." Now, Ward 8 is a disproportionately low-income area of Washington that covers the southernmost quadrant of the city, where the violent crime rate is significantly higher than in other parts of the district. One assumes that there are actual residents of the area you could speak to understand their view of the situation. There's no reason to ventriloquize an imagined person when there are real ones with thoughts to share. And to this point, I had a newsroom colleague, Clyde McCready, speak to people in Congress Heights, a neighborhood in Ward 8. In his story, he finds that those residents are much more skeptical of this deployment. Quote, "If Trump is genuinely concerned about the safety of D.C. residents," said one resident, "I would see National Guard in my neighborhood. I'm not seeing it, and I don't expect to see it. I don't think Trump is bringing in the National Guard to protect black babies in Southeast." You actually won't find the National Guard in any of Washington, D.C.'s high crime areas. The vast majority of soldiers and agents deployed to Washington are actually stationed in the vicinity of the White House and in other high-profile sections of the city. So you'll find them patrolling the National Mall over by the Lincoln Memorial. You'll find armored vehicles parked at Union Station. And you'll find ICE agents manning checkpoints on U Street, an area known for its nightlife and its bars and its restaurants and so on and so forth. If you want to patrol the city's water holes, if you're worried about, immigration enforcement at the 930 Club, then ICE will be there to help you out. If you're worried about crime, maybe not so much. But of course, those soldiers and agents are not there for safety, they are there for show. It is a truth of this administration, in fact, that much of it is for show. Hardly a day goes by without a new transgression against democratic norms or a fresh assault on the constitutional order. Each represents a serious threat to the American experiment in self-government, and yet each is also highly performative. The president's use of military force in Los Angeles, for instance, did basically nothing other than give the White House social media account a little more B-roll to use in its posts. The nationwide ICE raids have put thousands of immigrants, many with legal status, in detention centers around the country. But this is a far cry from the mass deportation now promised during the presidential campaign. Many of the president's executive orders have been blocked by federal courts, and his tariffs have done little other than begin to raise prices. There's been no manufacturing renaissance, no reinvigoration of the economy, no return to the pre-pandemic world that so many Americans were voting for when they put Trump back into office. And if we turn our attention to the president's foreign policy, we'll see something similar. The much ballyhooed attack on Iranian nuclear facilities was little more than a tale full of sound and fury signifying nothing other than a modest setback for the Iranian nuclear program. A couple months, they'll be right back up. The President's summit with Vladimir Putin in Alaska, it appears to be a dud too. an exercise in national embarrassment where we got to watch our president beg and be obsequious in front of an adversary. And in addition to that, it didn't do anything for the situation in Ukraine, just kind of a waste of time for everyone involved. Even the president's most dangerous actions, his plans to investigate his political rivals and turn the force of the national government against them, seem to fizzle out for lack of personnel or expertise. Ironically enough, you have to have a government staff of people who know what they're doing, even if you want that government to do, break the law and do terrible stuff. They should at least be competent. You want competently corrupt bureaucrats on your side. In all of this, it's as if the point for the administration is to get the right headline and hope that that headline intimidates the right targets. At this moment, several states are sending National Guard units to bolster the president's occupation of Washington, D.C. This is a dangerous escalation, especially since the president has threatened to deploy troops to other Democratic-led cities. Americans have, throughout their history, been occupiers, but rarely have they been occupied. The paradigmatic example, in our past, of American military occupying American cities is during and after the Civil War. Then, the Union Army occupied much of the South as something like conquered territory, and white Southerners at least understood themselves to be a conquered people. But of course, the goal of the Union occupation was not to subjugate the South, but to start the process of reconstructing and reintegrating the former rebels into the national community. It was to extend the rights of American citizenship to every person under the flag. It's to defend those rights in the face of violent resistance from vigilantes and vengeful ex-Confederates. This occupation right now in D.C. has a different purpose and sends a different message. It tells the people of Washington and other similar cities that they're less equal citizens under an elected government than subjects of a capricious ruler. It tells them that their freedom to live their lives free of harassment from mass federal agents is a function of their loyalty to that ruler. And it tells states that they can't expect fair treatment from the White House, reject his demands, and the president will send an occupation force with support from regime-friendly governors. Governors from states that have plenty of problems that are probably worth solving and not wasting time obeying the deranged orders of a deranged would-be king. But that's, is what it is. Now, all of this is still going to be for show, right? Most of these National Guard soldiers being sent to D.C. will spend most of their time around the same tourist-friendly areas where most of the National Guard in Washington already is. But just because it's for show does not mean, to use a term favored by Democrats, that it is a distraction.
And create a distraction.
The president isn't trying to shift your attention as much as he's indulging his grievances and pursuing, however impulsively, his political goals. And at the top of that list of goals, as he has made clear in many different ways, is seizing as much power as he can to rule the United States as a strongman. It's why he admires guys like Putin. He wants that kind of control over the country. The clumsiness, the hollowness, the occasional silliness of the president's actions should not distract you from the reality that even as he's putting on a show, and that's what he knows how to do, put on a show, he's also doing everything he can to reach that ultimate aim.